All right, this segment here today, we got a special guest, Dr. Scott Brown from University of Missouri. Is, by most accounts, one of the foremost dairy economists in the United States, and a good friend of mine. So I'm glad to have you here with us. One of the things we wanted to take a step back and talk about dairy policy from the ground up, basically, and in terms of the margin protection program. Do you specifically have any comments for the the viewing public here today on what Congress is intending to do, and basically how well you think they accomplished that?
Yeah, so I think when you look back at what we got with the margin protection program, number one, it was let's try to find a program that helps us in the very tough years that we saw in 2009 and 2012, and that really, I think, drove much of the discussion that got us ultimately to MPP. I think they saw previous policies not being as effective in terms of protecting risk, especially through those very tough periods of time, and that was much of what they were trying to fix. Again, looking at something that covers both milk prices and feed cost is certainly, I think, helpful for dairy producers when you see roughly 2/3 of production costs are related to the feed side. So in terms of what we got, I think it's a good step in the right direction in terms of being a risk management tool in a dairy producer's toolbox. I don't think it's going to work in all cases, but certainly in tough margin situations, those that have MPP coverage may find it very useful to their long-term survivability.
So we're sitting here in mid-March, and the milk prices have come down significantly from the past year average, I guess I'd say. We went through a sign-up, and I guess we'll talk about that later, about what you think the outlook for milk prices holds. But the sign-up that ended in December, basically for the 2014 year, with regard to the usefulness of it, I think depending upon what people signed up for, there might be a few payments being triggered or not.
Yeah, so it's still too early to know whether we're going to trigger payments, but given where we are today, it certainly looks like maybe the first couple of bi-monthly periods of 2015 we could trigger payments, especially for those that would have bought up substantially in terms of their level of MPP coverage.
Right. With regard to sign up, I guess nationally, do you remember any of those numbers off the top of your head?
Yeah, so we roughly, I think, have 50% of the operations in the country that have signed up for MPP for 2015. If you, I think, look a little further at the data, you'd find that most of those operations that did sign up took the very low $4 catastrophic coverage. A couple of reasons I think really come to mind on that. Number one, just trying to get their feet wet with the new policy, right. Not really knowing exactly what it was going to be like. Let's participate, but let's not put a lot of money in the game at this point. And two, I think early in the process of 2015, when we opened MPP sign-up in September, there were some really good opportunities to lock prices in on futures markets, and I think a lot of folks took advantage of that. Having done that, MPP was less of a needed risk management tool for them.
Right. With regard to, in the state of Texas, I think we were around 70% sign-up. Most of those were just the catastrophic level. Most producers need to understand a couple of things about how this is going to work. They're going to be making these decisions at a point in time, like the next sign-up starts this summer. What's the date exactly?
Yes, we're going to start July 1st of 2015 for 2016 sign-up.
And so they're going to have to do a little bit more homework in terms of figuring out where they think prices, both on the milk side and feed side, are going to be going, to really evaluate this. And not just evaluate the MPP program, but to evaluate it relative to their other options out there from the futures market, either hedging with options or hedging with regular futures contracts.
Yeah. So I always say, use it as a risk management tool. Don't try to maximize payments you're going to get from this program. If you go into it trying to maximize payments, you're probably very assuredly not going to be very happy with how that program works.
That's one of the questions I had for you. As you travel around, and I would venture to guess that you do more meetings nationally than anyone else in dairy, and you get to to be in front of audiences that have a wide range of whether in the past they've used any kind of risk management tools. What has been the reception in trying to get people to think beyond the payment to, I'm going to put so much money in, I'm going to invest so much money in a premium here, or whatever you want to call it, the cost of the program, and I might get a payment, might not get a payment. What is your feeling when you start looking nationwide on where the acceptance is really going to be?
Yeah, well, so number one, I think it's been very slow. It's different for dairy producers than any kind of policies they've ever had before. If you think about everything that we've had in the past in terms of any kind of direct payment program, it's really been, number one, you're in the program and you get these direct payments.
Right.
Now having to make the choice of what level of coverage I want, I think that we have a lot of education left to do to help producers to understand, number one, the risk profile in their own operation. How much debt do I have? How much low margin environment can I withstand? So I really go really starting from ground zero, especially relative to maybe some of the other commodities that have government programs operating there, where risk management with things like crop insurance have been in place much longer than what we've seen in dairy.
With regard, yeah, that's a good question. That's a good point. With when you start looking at futures in dairy, most people reject doing much hedging with the contracts as they have been over the last 30 years based on the thin markets. Do you see, has that, in your experience, have you seen many people where they've gotten burned in that situation, or is that just what you hear at the coffee shop?
Yeah, so I think you see a lot of folks who will say, I'm not going to use those futures contracts anymore. I even look back at 2014. You had folks that were probably in late 2013 locking in 2014 milk, and they'll say it's the worst decision they made ever because they ended up not reaping any benefits from locking those milk prices in because we only went higher.
Oh.
And my point to them all the time is, yeah, but you're trying to lay risk off. You're not trying to maximize dollars, and it's been a tough transition for folks. What I like about MPP is that what you're giving up is fixed. You know what you're paying in premiums. There is nothing else you're ever going to have to pay to participate in that given year. So the level of cost to you is fixed. And I think that's going to help a lot of producers who have been hesitant to go into futures markets because they're worried about things like margin calls. Now all of a sudden know explicitly what that cost looks like.
There's another, I guess I call it a myth, maybe it's actually right, but there's another myth that the producers around the country have mentioned to me that MILC had basically a limitation on production, so that it was limited out on larger farms. And I was told early on that this has got the same type of arrangement where it discourages larger farms, and my answer is it doesn't have. I turn it to, it doesn't discourage, it just encourages more for the smaller farms. How would you describe that basically?
Yeah, so you're really referring to the fact that your first 4 million pounds of covered milk is going to have a lower premium. If I'm a 200 cow or less kind of operation, that means I'm going to be in those lower premium payments for any of the quantity of milk I could cover. However, as I get larger and go above wanting to cover more than 4 million pounds of production or marketings, I have a much larger premium to pay. So again, I think it does encourage and give cheaper premiums to smaller producers. And I think that's part of the process because many of those smaller producers don't have as many good alternatives. Using futures markets gets a lot tougher for them given the size of contracts, etc. So I think, again, helping those smaller producers use these risk management tools is one of the reasons why you see some lower premium payments out of the 2014 Farm Bill. I tell large producers that doesn't mean all else equal you should avoid using it. Again, they need to look at the cost of covering different margin levels relative to these other risk management tools like futures markets. And at times, it may be better off to be an MPP, and other times you may be better off to cover that risk in futures markets. You just got to evaluate the cost of both programs. All else equal, smaller producers are going to be more apt to produce or to participate in MPP than larger producers because of the cheaper premiums.